Hi, everyone. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm wondering what
Liar.
I'm wondering what stupid joke you're gonna open with today.
That was it. I just teased you about saying you're doing great. That was it. I got nothing.
Okay. All right. I guess that's our intro.
Did- Give
We'll
me a
leave it
hint
at
about
that.
what's that?
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, welcome today or last time, and through this continued series, we've been talking about what doesn't move when everything is shifting and changing, and things that we thought we could rely on, we can't anymore. What doesn't move? What are the things that remain? What is the truth that we can sink into and that can help us move forward during this time? Last episode, we talked about being scattered and how some of us might be experiencing the scatteredness in our lives, in our jobs, in our homes, in our relationships, whether because of the current state of our world, or maybe it was happening before all of this pandemic. But we talked about how God said he was going to build his church and then he scattered his people and how unreal that is. And today we're going to talk about the reality that we don't change till we have to. And you're going to jump right into Acts 8, right?
Yep.
So let's do that. Tell us about
Okay.
Acts 8 and why we don't change till we have to.
Well, Acts 8 is an illustration of that because, and we talked about this a little bit last time, because Acts 8 is where the persecution happened. This was Saul, who was breathing threats against the church. Stephen had just been stoned. And in Acts chapter 8, the people in Jerusalem had been scattered. They became the diaspora and ended up in places like, well, the next chapter, they're in Samaria. And what's fascinating about that, well, there's a lot of things, but one is that back in Matthew 28 and Acts chapter 1, where Jesus gave the Great Commission to the disciples and to what became the church, he said, go into all the world, preach the gospel, make disciples from Jerusalem into Judea, into Samaria, and into the other areas of the world. And everybody there said, yes, we will. And it just reminds me of us. I mean, our heart to God is, yes, God. I mean, mine is, but we don't do it. I mean, but our heart is, yes. And that's why it's significant that Acts 8 is 12 years after they received their commission. Go to Judea, Samaria, leave your comfort zone. Call it the friendly confines of Jerusalem, because everything there was familiar. I mean, everybody basically had a moral code. They went to church, if you will, the synagogue. They were all Jewish, that kind of thing. And it's like we want to live. We think that's like God. You know, that's heaven on earth. Most anyway. But they didn't do it for 12 years. It took a persecution, and then they went. And I'm just struck by the fact that they didn't do it till they had to. And there's a scattering like that. There are things going on right now in the culture, instigated a lot by the coronavirus,
right?
That is forcing us as the church to rethink how we do what we do. And it just reminded me of a picture I have of what the church is called to be, that I think we're going to be, and I think we always have been. But hopefully this thing is, you know, in terms of not, we can't gather anymore. We can't have the big worship service anymore. But I likened it last session to playing without the queen. The queen is the most important thing on the chessboard. But if you want to get good at chess, learn to play without the queen. And the church is having to do that because we can't do the big event thing. And but I'm curious about what's going to happen in wonderful ways, because God's going to build his church. This will not change that, but there are things that are going to shift. And there's a story involved in this, and it was about 5 years ago. I had just come back from a sabbatical, and I'd really, what you do on a sabbatical is you let the ground go fallow, and then you just wonder what's going to grow in you that wouldn't grow because you just stay so busy. But I had enough time off to just go, and some things grew in me about the church. some of it was instigated by a conference I'd gone to. I'd speak at it, but I just stuck around and wanted to be part of it as well. And Reggie McNeil was the speaker, and he said this thing. He's a missional guy, and he said this thing I'll never forget. He said, for the last 100 years, we've been operating on an assumption. And the assumption was that if we fix it, they will come, meaning the church. And I was sitting in the seat, and my perspective of myself is, for instance, I've never been a seeker guy, like the seeker-sensitive model. And I don't have time to explain that whole thing, but the whole idea is we're going to dial the church into a place where we become really attractive and people will come here, and we want to use language that seekers get. And I go, I ain't doing that. We're going to do Jesus in your face. That sounds a little arrogant, but we're not going to do that thing. That's too shallow for us. But when Reggie McNeil said that thing, I realized that's exactly what drove my whole ministry. I never said if we fix it, they will come, but I hated church. I thought I hated the pretense. I thought there's people who have got all sorts of pain, but we're pretending we don't. And I wanted to be part of a community where we were getting real about our junk, our pain, our dysfunction, and realizing that if we bring that out into the light, it's embarrassing, but that's where you can get healed. And I mean, there was kind of a revival around that whole idea. So we fixed it, kind of, and they came. And that's an attractional. The whole idea is, we've got it, you need it, come get it, it's here. It's church as destination. And it's the only model I know. It's the only model we know. But it was at that conference, I'm going, holy moly, I've kind of given my life to that model. And then all of a sudden, as the numbers start going down, you want to start figuring out, well, what are we gonna do to fix that? Fix what? Fix the numbers. Okay. So all our anxiety is that we're not getting enough people out there to come here. But into that, another thing I was doing on my sabbatical is reading like a crazy man. There's been shifts in the culture. I don't think I need to prove that, but the shifts in the culture, like that, if you fix it, they will come thing works if the culture is still somewhat Christianized. Like people still have it on their radar that maybe you go to church. Honestly, more and more and more and more, and the data is in on that. That isn't what people think. They don't care about it. They're not even antagonistic necessarily toward church. They just don't care. That's just not on their radar screen, particularly millennials, people between 18 and 30, somewhere in there. They're not saying there's no millennials who don't go to church, but more and more and more. That is the deal. I talked to a pastor friend of mine who has several expressions of the church, amazing place in Minneapolis near the U. And he said, it's weird because all of their millennial focused things, they don't work. Trying to get them to come here. And he's the hippest guy I know. That's just not what's going to happen. Alan Hirsch did this thing. It's called, it's on my shelf. Doesn't matter what the name of it is. But he used this paradigm of, there was a pie chart, and he kind of sectioned off the culture. If 15%, let's say, of the culture that would go to church, goes to church, okay, and the pie chart was that, like the pie chart was like this little section right here, they'll go to church, and that, he called that the red water, the 15% who would go to church if they like your church. And it was red water because there was a feeding frenzy for that demographic. So churches are all fighting because the people who will go to church, we want them to come to our church. And so I don't even care if we, suck the life out of every little church. You're going to bring them all to our big church. Feeding frenzy, blood in the water. It's the attractional model. We got it. You need it. Come get it. It's here. And that works for a certain segment of the population. And while we're in the middle of the feeding frenzy, come get it. It's here. And everybody, big churches grow and little churches shrink. The blue water, which is the rest of the world, is almost entirely unaffected by that model. Come here. It's here. And I remember coming back from my sabbatical, and I was like messed up with that paradigm and preached it, and we believed it. And it would have taken, I think, more than we could have done to radical, because I thought it was a radical shift. it would be an entirely different scorecard. Celebrating how many came on Sunday would not be on the radar. It would be how many people are we equipping to go out there. In fact, that was one of the illustrations that Reggie used when, this is funny because I wrote it on a piece of paper, but he invited us to think about different areas of culture, like there's politics, education, business, sports, entertainment, and then there's the church. This is beautiful. Isn't that something? I'm like,
yeah, everyone can read that.
No, I'm like a freak when it comes. So politics, business, blah, 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 and over here is the church. And the thinking is that what we want, the churches, if we fix it, they will come, is that what we're going to get is all these segments of the culture to come to us. So politics, we're going to get the politicians and the mayor coming to my church. That's fine if they can do. And it just wears me out looking at it. But the vision God had given to us, and it just burned in me, was it isn't about getting them to come here. It's about equipping people who are here, providing reliable means of transformation. So people are actually knowing what it takes to and highly valuing the character of Christ, the life of Christ in people. And then we go there. Remember my illustration? I've done this one for years, but this is not where we play the game. Church is not where you play the game. And part of that was a slam at the legalism, and the people would get, when I grew up, everybody was getting all dressed up, really and metaphorically as well. Like they get all dressed up in their Sunday best to look good. And they would come and they would have their Bible and they would have their faces scrubbed. So we even look good spiritually, but this is not where you play the game. If somebody was in a locker room and they were playing baseball and they started hitting the ball around like, hey, look at how good I can hit. You're an idiot. This isn't where we play. We played out there. The locker room has a purpose, though. The church, the building, the organization has a purpose. How do you play? It teaches you how to play the game. It teaches you what play we're going to run next. It helps you if you got wounded from playing the game. Come back in here. We're going to get you healed up and send you back out. But the whole energy of the place is that we provide reliable means for you to be transformed into the image of Christ, so that when you go there, you've got something to give. But how many do we have come? How many numbers are down? What are you going to do? We're going to do nothing. We're not going to do anything. We're going to equip people and then empower them to live their lives in such a way that they reflect the image of Christ. And I am not saying it didn't happen or there aren't. I mean, I just think that's in the DNA of that blessed church and in the leaders as well. But I take all that stuff I just said about, it's out there, it's not in here, and the idea that people don't change until they have to. We are the incarnational church. This is all we got right now. And it's horrible. It's wonderful. I mean, wouldn't it be something? I just know that God's going to use this in some way. It's all we ever had, though, by the way. How many come here? It matters that people come. The locker room matters, but it's not where we play the game. And if I could say anything to people right now to be encouraged about, it would be that you are the incarnational model. And by incarnational, I don't know if everybody understands that, but when we think incarnation, we think that God became man. He incarnated human flesh, God in a man, Jesus. Well, Christ in you. Christ is in you and me. So we are the incarnation, the embodiment of Christ in the world. Just pulls. That's where the church is, and that's where it is now. It's where it always has been. And for us to, we talked a couple of sessions ago about lifting up our eyes from the rubble we always see. Let's all look up and see the possibilities, and maybe what's already happening. Paul said in Philippians something or other. It's Philippians. I think it's, I can find it. It's on the page on the left-hand side.
People are taking notes. They're writing
Oh.
Philippians.
Well, they'll figure it out. They
something
can go read Philippians and they'll find this passage. Just work out your salvation with fear and trembling. I love that because it just sounds so weird. What do you mean? One, he doesn't say work for your salvation. For by grace you've been saved through faith, that not of yourselves, not of anything you've worked at, lest any of us should boast. Our life with God is a gift. It's for free. Work out your salvation, meaning the life of God that you have that came to you by the grace of God for free. Work that life that's in you out. Work out that salvation with fear and trembling. Wait. Why? What? Why would you be afraid? I actually think, well, first, almost every place in Scripture that we have to deal with fear, it's a bad thing. Cast out fear, perfect love, cast out fear, don't have any fear. Now he's saying, do this with fear. Well, I think, there's a kind of fear that actually can shut you down, and it paralyzes you, and we want to cast that kind of fear out. There's another kind of fear that wakes you up. In athletic arenas, anybody who's ever played a sport, it's like you see these athletes, they're not afraid, but they're kind of afraid. There's this energy that they are wide awake. There's a fear that wakes you up. Be a little bit afraid of not working. Be a little bit afraid of just staying in our little clustered church where we all think the same, Jerusalem, and all live the same and work the same and look the same, and work that out into your living. Here's where people can see the life of God you have. Here's why. Next verse, because in a crooked and perverse generation, which one would that be? All of them, right? Paul is saying this to the Philippians, so they were messed up then. Because in a crooked and perverse generation, like the one we live in, people who are working out the life of God they have in ways that people can see out here are the only hope that generation has. That's the incarnational model. The Christ in you, being formed in you, changing you, making you smell more and more like him. Not oh God. We're in a culture now, like among the Christian cultures, it's like, I know of people who, for the first time in their life, they're ready to start protesting the state capitol because we demand our right to worship. Go away, all of you. Anyway, I'm gonna get in trouble for that one, right?
Oh, you are, totally. I think I'm gonna steal a phrase from you. I feel like you would say at the end of that, and that is the good news, beloved, right? That's the good news, is that the church hasn't gone away, and it takes us to realize that we are the church.
Yep.
Walking to your mailbox in a new way, talking with that neighbor, going to your job, all those teachers out there that are working so hard now over the internet. This is bizarre.
I know.
This is bizarre, and we can continue to let God do his incarnational work in us, and that is what spills out.
That's right. It spills out, and now I go back to that. I go back to the parable that we talked about a couple times ago of the sower who goes out to sow. Because even what you just said, Annika, like, oh yeah, I'm a teacher, medical, blah, blah, blah. They don't know I'm a Christian. Oh man, holy moly, life of God in you. There was a sower who went out to sow, and then he fell asleep. Meaning, I just gave what I had to give. Didn't mean nothing. It was just a bunch of seed. Who cares? Remember this? Every time in Scripture you fall asleep, it's a bad thing. Awaken, sleeper. And then he is awakened in this parable, and he looks around and goes, and it grew, and he knew not how. You have no idea. We are the church. We are the incarnational model. I don't care what the organizational structure is. That is the story. It's always been the story. I'm just fascinated. I know it's happening. I think we need to gather maybe the stories. But the whole thing about we don't change until we have to, I think this will, I hope out of this we will, more than we ever have, embrace this as being who we are, and even more fiercely go, okay, here's the locker room. It ought to smell bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're like sweaty and grimy and tired because you've been giving your life away, injured, and if you're an idiot, we'll bench you. I like that one too. God, don't tell anybody you're from our team. Anyway, I don't know. We hit a button here for me, so.
I guess we did. Well, maybe tell us some of your stories. Are you seeing the incarnational work of God in your life, or are you being surprised by ways that you are sharing who God is, and it's shocking you? Are you becoming awake and realizing that things have grown and you didn't even know it? Tell us about it. We love your stories. We love to hear from you. Thank you, Dave. Any last words you want to leave with, or did you use them all?
I have no words left. They're all over. They just puked them all out.
I don't believe you. He's got more in there. If I don't shut it off, he'll keep going. Thanks, everyone. We will see you in a few days.
Yep. Bye.